No. I want to do
Maxed.
my father, but
mine is during the not so much.
Okay, this is Welcome to Yiddish 101. Not. This is not Yiddish 101. Okay. Okay. So here, if we don't have your name on here, put it on here. All right. We're going to start, and we're at Gates of Reincarnation. Here we are. We're going to start on page Gates of Reincarnation, page 51.
That's the door. I'll take turns with you. Okay. I'll go to the next one. God willing, there will be more. Page what? 51.
51. Hello.
Wow.
I am. We're going to holiday weekend.
Holiday weekend.
Page again.
Gates. Okay, we're in the Gates of Reincarnation. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit as we see on page 51. Okay, Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel. Who were those guys? You know, it's really interesting though. If you want to look at it we always look at the Torah in deeper levels. That really it is a soul code. It's the code of the soul. Okay, and archetypes of personalities, and somehow we be caught in between either this one or that one, and their names really say who they are. The name is the essence of a person. Okay. The Baal Shem Tov does bring down if you want to wake someone up if they're sleeping, right? Like I say, it doesn't work for my teenage son, but for most people it does work, okay? Because the Hebrew name is the essence and you're calling their soul when they're sleeping. Cain, now interesting, what did Eve say when Cain was born? Kinisi, right? She said, I have acquired a man. Right? Kinisi ish et Adam. I have acquired. Cain, the root of the word Cain is koneh, liknot. Drawing forward. It is very ego. Okay? It's me, I. It has a good side to it. But you have to understand the force of what Cain is. And then there's the
vanity.
Yeah, or air, or we call vapor.
Airhead.
He was the first vapor man. Okay? So here, Hevel was air. So they're like almost diametrically opposites, okay? Interestingly enough. You always have to know that and hold that. And actually, there's we'll talk about it a little bit later, okay? So here we have Adam, and Adam blemished his soul. And then he had his two sons, Cain and Abel, and they continued to blemish their souls, which was not good, okay? And we see here in the increase the damage and blemish of the soul sparks. Now you have to it's very interchangeable when we speak about sparks. We always speaking about souls. Sparks are souls. We are sparks, and yet we're called souls. Okay, because they're interchanged a lot, and feel free to say, hey, soul, spark, is it soul? Really, they're very interchangeable. But in every generation, some sparks that are born become rectified. Here we go. Cain and Hevel, the sons of Adam Harishon, committed their own sin in addition to that of their father, and thus caused their sparks, which is the elements of their souls, to become more deeply immersed in what we call the klipot. The klipot are the shells, the husks. Okay? And the husks and the shells, the way it's defined here, it's not necessarily the physicality of what we experience in this world. It's also just a mentality also, okay? It's basically the husk would be when I'm enjoying my coffee or my drink, the pleasure is God, hopefully, the pleasure of the drink is coming from God, not from the thing itself. Okay, we always have to have that in mind, that the thing and the taste, God gave the taste, the drink, its elements, and the enjoyment that it has and the flavors and the colors and the textures and everything like that, it comes from the ultimate source, which is God, which is behind everything. It doesn't come from the coffee or the fruit. Okay, so that's in a kosher sense. Then there's evil klipot that we always speak about. In any case, look what he says. We understand Cain's sin. It's not that. Okay, it also is brought down. Cain also, when it came time to making the sacrifice, what did Cain offer? Anybody remember?
Vegetables, not the best.
Not the pishtan, the smelly, stinking flax. Okay,
Oh, really?
right? Yes, because when flax is being processed, right, the strands, they need to be soaked, and then there was the dregs of the fibers. After you soaked the main bulk of it, and you're going to make your flax, your garments, your clothes, the linen says, well, this must be for God. So this is what he offered to God, the dregs, okay? The garbage of the flax.
Oh.
Hey, he had a reason for it. He said, well, it must be, if this, I don't have any use for it, must be this goes to God, okay? You have to give him the benefit of the doubt to some degree.
That's why the word sacrifice means something that you'd rather not do without.
Okay, we learn now from Cain's mistakes. Okay. Hevel, was Hevel's sin? People always ask, what did he do wrong? Huh?
He's complaining.
Hevel looked at the divine presence.
He looked?
In other words, when he was offered a sacrifice, and he offered the fattest of the sheep, okay? The fire came down and consumed, and it was in a glorious, unbelievable experience of seeing the divine light. He looked at it. He looked at the divine light. Actually, my father-in-law, blessed memory, Zechuso Yegen Aleinu, he, as I was learning these texts on the phone with him, long distance, I'm like, what was Hevel's problem? So, of course, my father, he comes from Brooklyn, right? So he says, he was a loser. Okay. Actually, the paradigm of Hevel in the thought process is the whole introduced into the world, besides looking at the divine presence, he introduced to the world the concept of victimization.
Oh.
He introduced a program called victimization. Okay? He allowed himself to be victimized. When he was fighting with Hevel, who was fighting with Cain, he actually, according to the Midrash, Hevel actually beat Cain. He beat him. He had him down.
Yeah.
And Cain says, okay, let me go, I'll be good. And then Hevel turned his back, and that's when Cain got him. Okay? So he allowed himself to be, and people can go and claim all over the world, we are victims, and they stay victims. Okay? So that's not the kosher Hevel. Okay, you have a question.
2 sons of Aaron who...
Nadav and Avihu.
Well, according to the Midrash, they were looking forward to the death of Moses and Aaron so they could be in charge.
Yes.
And they gazed at the Shekinah.
Okay. So let's go. So we have Cain, it basically says murdered Hevel. I'll help you in a second answer the question, the point. Okay, it's a little bit off track because Nadav and Avihu are different persons, but I'll explain. Abel looks at the fire. Okay, bad boy. Okay, right. So which was a sin and obligated him to the penalty of death. Thus, they caused further damage and blemish to the soul sparks from the soul of Adam, different than the soul of Adam, that were originally damaged by the sin of the first man. In other words, it was an additional sin that they took their neshamas into a further place of darkness. Okay? Now, interestingly enough, since we're in this week's parsha, last week's parsha was Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came and approached the burning bush, he did not look. It says explicitly. When he did not look, he fixed Hevel. Okay? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was a reincarnation of Hevel. Okay? Now, how is he a reincarnation of Hevel? Like I say, Hevel means vapor.
Yeah.
Now, what does it mean by vapor? He was the ultimate guru in the Himalayan mountains who said, everything is an illusion. Okay? Vapor. Everything is air. It's all air. Right? When you say it's all air, you can't say it's all air to the nth degree. does say that everything is an illusion, but it has meaning. It's an illusion, but it has meaning. What meaning? The meaning that God gives it. God gives it meaning. What is the meaning that God gives? A mitzvah has meaning. When you find a money, a wallet on the floor, that has meaning because you have a mitzvah of returning a lost object. As opposed to the guru, oh, it's all an illusion, and he picks up the wallet and puts it in his pocket. Okay? Because it's all an illusion. That's not the correct way. We give it meaning, the meaning that God gives it. We look into the Torah and say, where is it now? What's God's advice right now to do with this wallet that we found on the table? So in other words, he fixed Hevel to a degree where it is vapor, but it's a vapor with meaning, the meaning that God gives it. Very much like this, the Shem Shmuel explains to us, like a person who's in a wavy, tossy ocean. He's in the sea, not in a boat, wavy, tossy, subject to drowning. Tossy, turny sea. Someone throws him a rope, and he holds on to that rope. Okay? So the rope is the meaning that God gives. The tossy, turny ocean is our experience of this world. Tossed and turned. What's our journey? All the things that are thrown at us. Waves crashing on our heads, left and right. We have a rope. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who fixed Hevel to the degree where he grabbed the rope and he says, this is the meaning. And this is going to give us our existence, and gives us our meaning. And then you pull yourself out of the tossy-turny ocean, out of this world through the rope. Got it? So that he fixed Hevel in that degree. And then there were other fixings of Hevel. Cain and Abel, they come back. Now, Nadav and Avihu, who looked at the fire, right, and they did blemish, I don't know where they came from exactly, okay? But I do know that Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron who died, they basically, their souls, they were so high, they were really high. And to Pinchas. When Pinchas killed Zimri and Cosby, it's like Pinchas' soul went up and came back down the two souls of Nadav and Avihu to come, and they dwelled in him, in Pinchas. Okay?
Oh.
They fixed, and also he fixed Cain also.
Into two souls?
Yeah, well, kind of two souls came into at the same time and together were inside Pinchas.
But Pinchas
And Pinchas was, by the way, kills Cain. Fixes Cain. In another domain, in another aspect, he fixes a certain aspect. Coming back, look at the next line. However, in each reincarnate into this world to become rectified. So like Moses comes as Hevel to become rectified. And Pinchas comes back as Cain. Actually, you know who else comes back as Cain? Bizarre. You ready? You love these kind of scenes from the Gilgul world because they put things together and you understand the whole root of everything and where everybody comes from and why are they doing what they're doing and what's going on. So amazing. Okay? So when Cain killed Abel, what happened? Right? Cain really didn't know what was the real cause of what is the point where the soul leaves the body. So basically he's just smashed him against trees and rocks and he didn't know when the body left his body there. And of course the ground had to swallow up Hevel. The ground was forced to open up his mouth and swallow Hevel, what was left of him. So the ground swallowed Hevel. Something needs to be fixed. The ground needs to swallow Cain. Is in terms of the tit for tat, the karma, the balance. So Moshe, here comes Moshe, last week's Parsha. Now we learned already in past that the soul basically has three levels. The soul has nefesh, ruach, and neshama. The nefesh is the lowest, ruach level 2 and level 3. The sparks of Cain that came back in later generations came back, nefesh, came back as the Mitzri, the Egyptian that Moshe killed and buried in the sand.
Oh.
Okay, that was the lowest part of Cain. Here's Hevel, and Hevel's all of a sudden, it's round 2. Cain and Abel, round 2. And here's Cain and Abel, round 2, where Abel does what he needs to do. He says a name of God. He didn't strangle him like Vincent Price or throw him off a scaffold like Prince of Egypt, right? I think that's what happened in Prince of Egypt. I don't remember. But anyways, it wasn't anything like that. Moshe said a name of God, and the Egyptian man was dead, and the ground, and he buried him in the ground. Okay? That's the nefesh of Cain. Who is the ruach of Cain? Korach.
I was waiting for that.
Korach was the ruach of Cain, right? The what we call it, the incense cook-off to the death, okay? To the death. The incense cook-off tomorrow. So they did an incense burning. Of course, Korach, also the ground swallows Korach. Who is the neshama of Cain? Yitro. Yitro becomes a rectified Cain, okay? In the higher sense of it. So when you see these pictures and all these things, now, just to finish off, since I was off the course with Nadav and Avihu, who do come into Pinchas, Pinchas dies 400 years later. He lives a long time. He got a covenant of peace. It lasted till Yiftach, the time of Yiftach, where he played doctor, but he didn't make a house call.
What?
Yeah.
Who?
Yiftach. Yiftach was the one who swore that the first thing comes out of my house. If I win this battle, the first thing comes out of my house. I sacrifice. It was his daughter. Oh boy, do I sacrifice her? Do I not? I made a vow. I'm sorry, honey. This is the way things go. Meanwhile, he could have gone to Pinchas, and Pinchas would have annulled the vow, and everything would have been cool. But he says, "I'm the king. I'm the leader. I don't let him come to me." And Pinchas says, "I'm the doctor. Let him come to me." People go to doctors and dies. Between this and this, she died. God is not too crazy about this kind of situation. Two knuckleheads on one side of the city and one too, both under some kind of, I don't know what happened, some kind of ego overtook them. And so Pinchas had to die. He was supposed to live forever. He comes back as Pinchas is Eliyahu. Eliyahu Hanavi. And he lives forever. Nadav and Avihu go through this whole to become Eliyahu. Very high. Okay? Going back here. So he says here, my father-in-law says the note, right? That is good news. That the sparks of Adam, of Cain and Abel, will come back in every generation to do some fixing, because otherwise there'd be no hope, right? He says, this is good news. All do not end up like Cain and Abel. There is a tikkun, okay? The quarry of the souls of a generation will either be that of sparks, of the head, or of the eyes, or the nose, the ears, shoulders, arms, torso, hips, legs, knees, all the way down to the ankles. We always look at it as we look at the spiritual imagery of this one universal soul that we are all part of Adam, Arishon, and all of our souls come from him. And some of our souls look at it as a quarry. Look at it as a quarry, right? The quarry has our head, it has shoulders, it has body parts as we look at it. We use our body as borrowed terminology to something of the impression in the spiritual realm of what the soul is, that different souls come from different places. Okay? Just very much like a quarry. Okay? Now, he brings down here in the note, okay? Here, well, let's look at his note first. The quarry is the place in the soul body of Adam that the soul sparks derive from. The souls of each generation come from a different place in the soul body of Adam Arishon. It is like a spiritual quarry from which the sparks of the souls of each generation are hewn from. So some of these sparks reincarnate to become rectified, but some of them reincarnate, become more blemished because of sin, and fall deeper into the klipot. So different things go in different ways, okay? Now there is a different thing that he brings down from in the note here in the Mitoch Midvash, that he, interestingly enough, he says, and he brings down from Eitz Chaim, the gate of Mochin, the gate of consciousness, chapter 5, that Nitzutzin, which we call sparks, or we will call souls, are dependent according to the merits and the actions and the good deeds of the mother and father. So it's kind of almost like you would think as a contradiction. wait a minute, are they just coming down anyways when the couple has a child? That this soul comes from the place in the quarry, either from the head, torso, or feet? Or does it come according to the deeds of the mother and father? Okay? So he brings down here a place where it comes from the deeds of the mother and father. They do a mitzvah that is dependent upon the eyes. Let's say they're really good with their guarding their eyes, protecting their eyes. They don't watch stupid things on TV, right? Or anything like that.
Where is it?
I'm reading from a note. You won't see it in yours,
Oh,
okay?
it's not in there.
Sorry, I'm reading from the Hebrew here. They don't have a translation. So what happens is they do some kind of mitzvah that's meritorious, that happens to be appropriate for a certain part of the body, let's say. Or let's say hearing Lashon Hara, they don't hear Lashon Hara. Anybody tells them any juicy piece of gossip, it goes in one ear, out the other. They do not accept it. And that you all should always, we're all experts in that. We hear stuff all the time. People might say things. No, I'm not going to accept it. Period. Right? Right? So it's a big thing. People accept, usually face value. Did you see it happen? No, but somebody told me. Okay? So in any case, whatever it is, the part of the anatomy that the person were involved in terms of this mitzvah, so they draw down sparks of the nefesh, of a soul, which is dependent upon that place, or something similar. So this is not a contradiction, he says, because here it's speaking about a general limb. There's general limbs, and there's in a general limb, let's say right arm, associated with that limb in Adam's soul, in the whole soul, okay? And v'habiru b'zeh tului kafi b'chinet matzav neshamo. So this kind of separating, coming from the limbs, is talking about what he's talking about, referring to here, the quarry of souls. So you could draw souls from, depending upon a good deed, or a general sense comes from the spiritual body part. Okay? Okay, and that goes only according to times. Interesting. Why time? We're going to see in a later paragraph that when we get to the foot, which we are in now, we hope, we're called in the period of time, which means we're in the footsteps of the Messiah, the heel. Do I say it right? The heel of the Messiah. We're in the lowest part. Our generation, when we look at the head versus the feet, when they look at that, you can look at it as a time spectrum. Like the earlier generations would be associated with the head. The head had all faculties. They had eyes, ears, which when we look at the earlier generations, they saw God. They saw miracles. We look at those as the head of the generations of man. They had such an unbelievable, witnessing and experience almost directly with angels. They talked with angels like we talk with people at the stop and go. Okay? We don't have that. So as the generations got a little further, we look at that like the torso of humanity in history. The torso has a heart, but there's no real eyes, ears. The heart has a deep sense too. It's a deeper sense. Like the sages of the Talmud, they did have that kind of heart and that kind of direction. They did have a certain pulse, a connection that came from the heart.
Very contaminated, but
they didn't have eyes and ears like the head has, but they had a heart. They had a connection, okay, closer to the head, but as opposed to the last generation, be us, we're the heels. There's no senses. As a matter of fact, I think it's a place that can't be tickled. What? Mashiach.
Wow.
When all of the sparks from head to toe are elevated and have done what they need to do, Mashiach comes. There's an end to it. Baruch Hashem, if we get through these texts, you'll see, Baruch Hashem. Because the real dichotomy is, wait a minute, you're coming here to fix something. What happens if you get caught up and you mess up? A person messes up and does a sin. Dude, that means you're sinking back, what he just tells us, back into the klipot. You're back into the klipot, you're starting all over again. That's the worst kind of game. The worst kind of game is where there's no advancement. You're climbing the mountain, you climb 3 steps, fall back 5. That is not a nice scenario. That every time you climb 3, you fall back 5. No. You're not going to get anywhere. Baruch Hashem, God has a safety hatch that we're going to describe right now. Okay? Now, in terms of the safety mechanism that he has, Baruch Hashem, we're going to get involved in something that we have to understand in terms of the connection between reincarnations and Tichias Amesim, revival of the dead. Right? It is the highest belief, one of the main beliefs of the Jewish people, according to the Rambam, that all Jews, in order to be really considered a 100% bona fide Jewish neshama, must believe in revival of the dead. Okay? Now, some people just don't know how to handle it. They don't know what to do about it. It's cloaked in mystery and different forms and shades and explanations. And even if you go into the Talmud, you are mystified. This revival of the dead and what it is. Okay? What is it, really? Okay? So there's explanations, and there's a spectrum of explanations. There's a spectrum of what this revival of the dead is. But we're going to connect a little bit of reincarnation. What does that have to do with revival of the dead? Okay? So I'm going to give it to you right now before we do the text. There are different types of sins that a person can do. Okay? Which are so chamur. We call it chamur. What do they call chamur? Strict sins. I'm not going to list them for you. But there are a person that, God forbid, would blemish his soul to a point where he would, with a sin of the highest level, okay, which we'll just throw out here in case you're wondering. Give me an example. Idolatry, right? We don't know what idolatry is anymore these days. Rabbi Chaim Zimmerman, my father-in-law, constantly quoted, holds, today there really is no real idolatry. Now, most of the religious world beg to differ. And we do, for our sense and purposes, we do say that anything outside of Judaism in thought is idolatry, and that is true. But in terms of what the real idol worship is back then, where they actually believed the statue was their source of their success, in a statue, even though I know there are rabbis who will say emphatically that in India they do, right? Okay, so Rabbi Zimmerman and the other rabbis have this disagreement. Okay, it's beyond just letting you know that there is a rabbi who does say it, that this day there isn't any. But no one really believes in the statue. If you rub the statue 3 times, you are going to be blessed with riches. Okay, or you kiss it, or you do that.
Believed in it in those days either.
I'm not sure about that. The taiva, the lust for idolatry was huge to a degree that we cannot fathom these days. The description that it gives in the Talmud was that if you were in my days, when everybody was involved in worshiping the Baal or whatever idol it was, if you were wearing a cloak, they wore cloaks in those days, you would take your cloak and put it in your teeth. Because you're wearing a cloak, it's hard to run when you're wearing like a dress, right? You must admit, right? I've never tried it. We should maybe, do a Mythbusters. How fast can you run? Okay, with a cloak. But he says you would take your cloak, put it in your teeth so you can run to go worship the idol. In other words, not even just to hold it up and run. You want to really, you run. You put it in your mouth so you could really get a zest of running, right? A geschmacka run. Okay, a real, right? That's the lust. It was like spiritual pornography. We don't have a concept of what it is. I'm just throwing that out there that, we don't know. Okay? They destroyed the Avodah Zorah. They had destroyed, the evil inclination for idolatry at the time of the temple. They prayed and had it eradicated. Okay? And so we don't have it really anymore. Thank God. Okay? But I'm just going to give you for an example. Let's say a person would somehow commit such a sin like that. That's a very strict sin. Okay? And definitely to lead others to do it as well. Okay? So this kind of person who does this, so upon him we say that his body will not get up in revival of the dead. People who do certain strict sins, they don't get up at revival of the dead. Okay? Their bodies do not warrant this merit. Basically, revival of the dead would be, of course, simply speaking, our bodies will disintegrate into the grounds, except for there's this one bone that is called the luz bone in the spine that cannot be totally destroyed, right? That is fed at the 4th meal, right? If you have your fourth meal, which means the meal that you have on Saturday night after Shabbat is called the fourth meal, feeds that bone. It's the only meal of the week where that bone gets nutrified, okay? No other meal that you have any other time. What? Yeah, the only minhag, I looked in the sources of the minhag. I think I still do it out of habit. The real thing is to put it in the eyes, right? And then everybody does it in their pockets for money. Okay, I think got a little out of hand here. You know, I think that my friend looked up in the minhag, the Tamia minhagim, that it's really the eyes is the place. I think I also do that. Okay, because maybe it's to remind you, eat something. Okay, because that is the meal where that bone stocks up that time. Anyways.
Rabbi, what if...
Okay, we'll stop it. Yes.
Can
You share the question first. Yes.
A person dies, well, he can't do tshuva up there, but he goes to Gehenna and his soul, everything is cleansed in a washing machine, okay? And then he still can't, when Mashiach comes, he can't be resurrected, even though everything was cleansed.
Okay, so now you're saying if a person did a real strict sin, okay? So you got a great question. We're going to answer your question. Okay? You have a question?
Yeah, what if a person repents before he dies?
Oh, then forget it. You can fix anything. If you repent, if you do tshuva, you can fix almost anything. And Hashem will work it out. Okay? Hashem will work it out if you do tshuva. If the person doesn't do tshuva, right? The guy had relations with his donkey. Okay? I have to go extreme here. Okay? Bilam did that, right? So, anyways, the guy did terrible things. Terrible acts. Disgusting acts.
Didn't Adam do?
Okay, that's different.
Okay.
Let's not go there. Okay, so the idea really here is the person's body does not warrant to get up at Techiyas HaMesim. He has lost. That body did something so damaging. The soul, that body does not get up at Techiyas HaMesim. Also, they say somebody who loans money with interest does not get up. A Jew who loans another Jew with interest does not get up at Techiyas HaMesim. Okay? So that's just like another one of those things.
So
Okay?
in Israel, that the bank.
I knew Rabbi Zimmerman, Zichrono Livracha, never would take a loan from a bank in Israel.
I know they're. Okay.
They do a heter iska. It's done.
Okay.
Okay. Any other question? Yeah.
So basically, that all that body is not resurrected, but that doesn't mean that a new body, once the soul has been purified in Gehenna, or through Teshuvah, would be able to be formed.
Okay. So to continue on the note, I think it might answer your question. So that soul, what happens to that soul? The body ain't coming back, but that soul, he did some things. He must have done something good while he was alive. Gave some tzedakah, made a prayer, helped somebody, something good, right? That's right, but he did something bad. So therefore, even though even though that he did do some good deeds that fixed his soul, it did fix, because good deeds fix, good deeds build, right? Necessarily, he needs to come in another complete reincarnation, that soul, a new reincarnation in a new body, in order to fix from what he blemished, okay? And he has to acquire a new body, because his first body is going to be destroyed and it will not go up at Techiyas HaMesim. So really what happens is, B'kitzer, that soul doesn't go to Gehenna. He has to go into a new body. Okay? So the soul that did that huge blemish has to come into a new body. That old body is gone. You are not getting up as Timmy anymore. Timmy is bye-bye. Okay? You are now George. Okay? And the merits that you did move over to the body of George. But you still have to fix the big bad blemish that you did while you were Timmy, but Timmy is bye-bye. Okay? Right? Do you like my Hebrew names? Sorry about that. All right. That's one type of soul. That's one type of Gilgul. That's a complete Gilgul. Now, there's a little slighter type that we're going to talk about now, which he calls it an Ibur from birth. okay? Or what we call a Gilgul, which is like an Ibor, a reincarnation which is like an Ibor. As we've been discussing before, you don't know what an Ibor is. An Ibor is usually, there's a spark of a soul that needs to come and fix something, usually, and to help a person. And therefore they can come and almost piggyback onto, impregnate into another person's dominant soul. He's really soul X. He's George, right? And yet he has, right? He has, Ruvain, still a spark of Ruvain attached to him. Why is Ruvain attached to him? Now, we learned in the past there are an Ibor, usually the Ibor that we discussed, this impregnation, this influence that comes and attaches to the mind of a person, comes from the soul of a righteous person who's completely fixed. He's left this world. Either he could be gone from the world from generations ago, even as far back as Avram Avinu, or he could be even a tzaddik, a righteous person who's still alive in this generation right here and now, that can come and influence the person's mind, okay? But here he's talking about some other kind of Ibor. This kind of Ibor is the type of soul, this neshama, that he came into one body and he became fixed. He did mitzvahs. He did the mitzvahs that he needed to do. Gewalt, amazing. But he also did some averas. He did some transgressions. But he didn't do the real strict transgressions. He didn't do real big bad ones, okay? He did light transgressions, okay? Now, God is not a vatran, we say. A vatran, he's not mevater. Huh? You know what it means to mevater? It's just a word, it's such a great word, I have to say it in Hebrew, because I don't know a translation for it in English, okay? Forgo and let things go. Accounts are payable. He holds everybody to pay up the debts, okay? He doesn't let things slide, okay? Then God, measure for measure, lets him slide, and he slides away, okay? And that's like the worst kind of destiny that a person would to have. We don't say God holds negative actions accountable, but he's very rachmanas. He's so compassionate. He'll take a coin a day. He'll take a penny a day for 1,000 years, okay? He can take it in a way where it doesn't come off in some huge debt that needs to be paid, or a huge amount of suffering. You could take it little by little, but it needs to be paid up, okay? So the person really fixed their souls, amazing, Baruch Hashem, they did tremendous mitzvahs, they did their mission, they fulfilled their purpose, but they also sinned in their lifetime. Ruvain, let's look at it as Ruvain. Okay, so he's not those people who did the Avera that he doesn't come up into Chias HaMesim. He will get up as Ruvain. Ruvain did mitzvahs, they did merits, right? But still, right, these do not need to come in a complete resurrection in a body by itself, because he's already acquired for himself a body. He has his body. Reuven was my lifetime. Reuven, my soul was in Reuven. Okay? He comes, right, in a reincarnation, partnered in the body of another, with another neshama that came to fix the real strict sin. So we had George, who needs to come he needs to fix something real big.
But that's a temporary?
No, this is not temporary.
It's a lifetime.
You're going to see it right now in the text. I'm just giving you the prelude, and then the text should read pretty straight, okay? Because otherwise we're going to get a little choppy. But if I give you this, because he gave the introduction and I like it, because it helps you to figure it out, okay? The text. I'm going to explain it in a second, okay? In other words, George, something so big in his previous lifetime. George, he's gone. The body of George is gone. The soul of George has to come into Shimon, okay? Shimon. So Shimon now, he's got a new body. And he's got to fix what he did in his previous lifetime, some serious sin, okay? So he's really Shimon's soul in a body of Shimon, okay? But Reuven, who did a big fixing in another lifetime, but he did in some light sins. He needs to fix those sins. Not all of his soul needs to come back in a reincarnation. Only sparks of his soul need to come back to fix the sins that he did, the light sins. And therefore he comes and we'll call it a piggyback, an ibur, this impregnate. He attaches like a partnership together with, we call him, who do we call him now? I lost the names. Reuven?
And Shimon.
Right? Reuven, who is the main soul? Shimon. Shimon's the main soul, and Reuven is now attached to Shimon's soul. So you kind of have like two souls in one soul right now. The scenario is Shimon had to come back to fix something really bad in his past life. That body is not getting up.
How is that different or the same as a dibuk?
Because really you're going to see here that the soul, dibuks are negative.
Always.
Yes. Dibuks are always negative.
But otherwise.
Dibuks, they can't even reincarnate. They wish they could reincarnate. They don't even have the merit to reincarnate, a dibuk. They did something extremely bad where they get what's called the kafakela, which is called this like in-between phase, like sitting on a tarmac for infinity in a full airplane that's not going anywhere, and they didn't put the AC on, okay? You just want to get moving. I'm happy if the plane would just move, right? Right? So that's terrible. You don't want to be in, it's literally the slingshot. I've described it in different terms, okay? If you really want a scary book, Lori, go get Minchas Yehuda by Rabbi Yehuda Fataya, Minchat Yehuda. They translated it recently, and he goes into very scary stories about all of the dibuks that he interviewed. It was at the turn of the century, Rabbi Yehuda Fataya, and scary stuff. Okay, you have a question?
Yes. So, like, while they're on the tarmac, if those that are alive are able...
No, they're not on the tarmac of those that are alive. They're on tarmac with other boys.
Those that are alive, that are in this realm, able to pray for them and provide, like,
So basically, to go into Kafakela, it's a purgatory, or we'll call it a limbo stage of the soul who did something so bad that he doesn't even merit to get to Gehenna. He doesn't even merit to get into another reincarnation. He's in this limbo stage, okay? So the only way to get out of it, because really what it is he's tormented by his own negativity. He's confronted by his own negativity. No one has a recharge? Okay, we're going to lose the charge. Okay, no one. I usually have my rechargers here. They're not here today. It's okay. It's all good. So what happens is the only way to get out of such a situation is to be a dibuk, is to invade another body, because then you don't have to confront the person's negative demons who he created in his lifetime through his negative actions. We'll call those the demons, okay? Yeah. His own negativity he's confronted with in order to escape that. Now, also there are certain situations where there are tzaddikim who will see these people and will be able to effect a rectification for them to help them to move on. The Baal Shem Tov was one of those, okay? Every Erev Shabbat, every Friday, he would be in Shemona Esrei 2-3 hours. Daven once with him on the Friday. He daven early. You know, as soon as it was midday, he would go into the synagogue and pray, and he was there 2-3 hours until, you got to get ready for Shabbos, right? And his brother-in-law asked him, what's the deal with your long Shemona Esrei on Fridays? You're not usually in such a long Shemona Esrei, silent prayer. He says, well, because I say these certain names in the second prayer of the Shemona Esrei, in Techiyas HaMesim, and all of a sudden I'm confronted with all of the dead souls. You've heard this story before. I'm confronted with hordes and hordes of dead souls that can't move on, and I'm helping them to move on, right? And he told his brother the name. His brother tried it the week after, of course, passed out because he was like, ah! Right, it was freaky. It was an army of zombies coming after him. It looked like something terrible, terrifying. Passed out. Of course, he revived himself. He didn't do that anymore. So in any case, there are tzaddikim, righteous people, who do help those souls in that kind of stage to move on. Or a dibuk, which we don't really have predominantly much anymore. Maybe you have, but they would probably be schizophrenic people who are in the hospitals. Okay? Could be. Don't know for sure. Anyways, so we see here, we call this Gilgul, this kind of reincarnation is a Gilgul Dome Le'ibor. This kind of reincarnation of the second soul, Reuven, right, who goes into Shimon, attaches to Shimon, right? Shimon did the big bad sin, Reuven did the small sin. It's called a Gilgul, a Ibor from birth. Okay? So now we're going to do this text. There are other kind of souls we won't go into.
Don't understand it.
Why? Okay.
Because I thought that Reuben was going to go into somebody good.
No. Reuven needs to
George
fix.
was the bad.
George was bad. George ain't coming back. Okay? but George's soul now became into Reuven. Oh, Shimon. Sorry, Shimon. Let's get it clear. Shimon is the big bad. Okay?
Shimon fixed it, except
No, he didn't. His body's gone. He did such a terrible sin in George's life while he was George. He had to reincarnate as a new body called Shimon.
right.
So he has to fix what he did in his from his previous lifetime. Not yet. He's just getting born right this second. He hasn't he's coming into the world in a new body, and this so far is the scorecard.
Baby? No, just in a regular body.
At birth, he is a new soul coming at birth.
Okay.
As a new soul in a new body. He is now Shimon. He is lifetime. Okay?
You said he was going to correct that and commit a
He's in a process. His whole lifetime will be a process of correcting what he did while he was George in his previous life. That's Shimon. Let's take Reuven.
You're talking about an adult? Someone comes into an adult?
No. Ibor. The classic Ibor is while a person's adult, they could merit the wavelength, the soul, the vibrational frequency of a tzaddik that can influence them only for positive.
I got it.
Only for good. Okay? Not for negative.
Okay,
Never
I
for
understand.
negative.
People say
No, it's not so
they
rare.
start
You could do it.
acting
Everybody, you do it all the
differently
time.
and
Probably.
righteous, and they feel that
Huh?
someone all of a sudden changes for the good, and they say they might feel that this tzaddik came in,
Absolutely.
and all of a
Yes.
sudden he changes.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Okay? Let's not, do what they classically do in the frum world and then they knock it. Okay? Okay? Now, that's George who becomes Shimon. Okay? George becomes Shimon. Got it? Now let's get back. Reuven, new person, different person, lived in the same generation as George. Reuven. He did mitzvahs. He did gewaltic. He did what he needed to do. He was mamish, unbelievable. Okay? He did his tikkun. He mamish fixed his soul with mitzvahs, positive mitzvahs. He did some light averas. The averas have to be fixed. He dies as Reuven. Okay? And they make an evaluation and they go, okay, you got to fix these. So part of your neshama has to go into Shimon as an Ibor. And you're going to ride with Shimon, and you're going to go through Shimon's life, and you're going to go through his whole entire life, and you're going to fix what you need to fix. Okay? So you have someone who did a strict sin, someone who did lighter sin, and here they're coming together. But one is the essence and one is just the attached.
And they're going to be both put into
the same body of Shimon. Really, I mean, you got to look at it in terms of hours. You don't know who the heck is part of you. I mean, when you think about it, who am I? If you come out of this class with just, I don't know who I am, okay, then you've succeeded in understanding something. Okay? That's great. Right? Okay, let's look at the text. Let's look at the text. Okay.
Shimon is going to commit some of his own new little small sins.
Good. Excellent. Great question. Now, what happens if more sins are done? Shimon might commit more sins. You're right. And then what's the predicament then? You're going to say Reuven, who's tagging along, right, with Shimon, he's going to get messed up again. So it's like climbing 3 steps and then falling back 5. Thank you very much.
Acting out.
Okay, let's look at the text and he'll explain. Okay? Section 4, intermediate category called Ibor from birth. Ibor from birth for nearly completely rectified sparks is like Ibor in some respects and like Gilgul in other respects. Right? Okay, so some reincarnate to become rectified. This is a total reincarnation. But they are not entirely careful and they sin. This is a type of soul that does a real strict sin and they need a completely new body. This is Shimon. Okay? Or George. Such a spark will become immersed again in the klipot with all the minor sparks that derive from him and depend upon him. What do you mean? Again, read this line. Such a spark will become immersed again in the klipot with all of the minor sparks that derive from him and depend upon him. Meaning there's other souls that didn't sin so bad that are attached to him. In other words, this is the scenario that he described it in different words of case and point. We have Shimon and Reuven together, okay? As he says in the notes, there are major sparks and minor sparks. The major sparks are composed of many minor sparks. This is how you understand our own soul. Major sparks, minor sparks. We are minor sparks of a major spark, and we also have in our soul minor sparks, okay? It's all about the sparks. They may reincarnate altogether in one Gilgul, one reincarnation, or they may separate into minor sparks that reincarnate into many Gilgulim. Just to get this point that you could have different sparks, like what we have the case of Reuven. He has to separate into many sparks. Some of those sparks are going to go into Shimon. Okay?
And other sparks can stay in.
Other sparks that got fixed, they don't need to come back. They go to their place. Okay? What are we considering here is an intermediate case that involves both Gilgul and Ibor. It's kind of like this is a mixture of case. We have Gilgul, which is a whole thing. From the time of the person is born, a completely new soul comes into that person. Not new soul, sorry. A whole soul has to come in. And then what we call a Ibor, which is a spark of a soul that comes to a person. Okay? And here's going to be kind of a case of both, a mixture. The Rav is now going to describe the intermediate case of Ibur from birth, which is in some aspects like an Ibur, and in some aspects it's like a Gilgul, a whole reincarnation. There are parts of soul that reincarnate and come to a person when he is born, as in the case of in reincarnation, in Gilgul, a full Gilgul. However, they have already been rectified as in Ibur, and like Ibor, they can reap reward from mitzvot that are done in the person's lifetime, but they do not suffer guilt from the sins that may be committed. Thus, they are an intermediate category.
They do not.
Yeah. So, in other words, we're explaining Reuven. Reuven is going to be attached to Shimon. Okay. Is Reuven going to incur more damage when Shimon damages his soul, because he's on a bad track, or not? So I'm going to jump to the answer. The answer is it's a pure benefit, only mitzvot, and no damage. He's not going to incur damage from any more sins that Shimon will do. Okay?
What about himself? Can he commit any more sins on his own?
No, he is just an positive influence. He's only there for positive. Reuven is only there for positive influence. He's not the main guy. He's an influence, and he's only positive. He will not do any negative influence whatsoever. He cannot incur any negative effects from the negative acts that Shimon does. Okay? The reason for this phenomenon is that there are two types of blemishes resulting from a sin. As a consequence of serious sin, which will be explained later on, the soul sparks are badly damaged. They undergo new Gilgul, which means new body. George becomes Shimon. However, the result of less serious sins is a less serious blemish. A soul may reincarnate, achieve extensive rectification, but nevertheless remains somewhat blemished because of some light, quote-unquote, light sins that were committed during the Gilgul, the reincarnation. These parts of soul that are mostly rectified, but not completely, will reincarnate again at the time of birth and remain with the person until the end of his lifetime, as in Gilgul. However, they will reap reward for mitzvot, and they will not suffer guilt from sins that may be committed, as in Ibor. Okay? So I underline this part. It is these parts of soul, which are less seriously blemished, that constitute the intermediate category undergoing called what's Ibor from birth. It's like an attached soul from the birth of the person. Okay, continuing in the text. All sparks of nefesh, even those already rectified, return in complete Gilgul, means they did a light sin, at the time of birth with the individual spark that was damaged. In other words, Reuven is going to come and join with Shimon. They do not separate from one another until day of death. Okay, just to let you know, this Ibor is a strange Ibor. It's not like the Ibor we discussed. that after a person is grown, they develop themselves and grow, they can be privy to a high influence. This is kind of an influence that comes from birth. It was a soul that fixed themselves a lot, but they did some damage, and they're there all the way until the day of death. The Ibur, on the other hand, Ibur number 1 that we discussed in the previous weeks, they're righteous souls. If the person does something real bad, they could leave. They can come and go at any time. Okay? Here today, gone tomorrow, the person does something really bad, that soul, that type of Ibur can split. Here, it doesn't. It's stuck. Okay? All of the sparks of nefesh, even those that have been rectified, are those that have been mostly rectified, but not completely. Did I do this? Okay. They return at the time of birth with those soul sparks that have been badly damaged and will require extensive tikkun in this lifetime. And with those that have not been rectified at all, that's a third type. Okay. There could be another Ibur in there that has never done a mitzvah. We'll get to that later. However, Gilgul of mostly rectified sparks is called Ibur. In other words, this is what we call an Ibur from birth. It is a reincarnation, but it's like a Gilgul on one hand because it comes from birth, and it's like an Ibur because it's only attached, and it can only reap the benefits of a mitzvot and does not get damaged from sins. In other words, they reincarnate as an Ibur from birth. The reason it is called Ibur is as follows. They do not share in the sins of this body, only the merits. In this way, they are like the souls of righteous tzaddikim who have died and come as an Ibur during a person's lifetime and not at birth. Okay. So even though most of the rectified sparks have to return with the damaged ones, they only benefit from the reincarnation. There's only benefit done and no damage. Thus, a spark that has not been rectified whatsoever by the performance of mitzvot to which it is related, meaning a body part. In other words, souls come from the what we call the quarry of souls. They have certain mitzvot to do, just like if you come from the supernal, the cosmic right arm of Adam's soul, you have to do right arm activities. Okay, in other words, things that are associated with kindness. Let's say if you came from the left arm of Adam's cosmic soul body. So that means that's more discipline. You need more coolness, more discipline, okay? Because that's associated with left energy, okay? Thus, a spark that has not been rectified whatsoever by the performance of mitzvot to which it is related, or as a result of transgressing those sins from which there is no life, meaning George, it must reincarnate into a second body which will be named for it. We'll talk about that later. In other words, the transgression was so serious that the person became disqualified to participate in the resurrection of the dead and in the life of the world to come. The damaged spark must undergo major rectification. Okay, skip that next commentary. Go to the text there where it starts with however. However, sparks that have achieved tikkun through performance of mitzvot, but have also been blemished through transgressing of light sins, only reincarnate as an Ibur of the sort mentioned previously, which is called an Ibur from birth, even though it is also called a Gilgul because it came from birth. Okay? In contrast, skip the commentary. In contrast, there are sparks that have not been blemished through their sins after having been rectified by mitzvot, okay? They do not return at all except as an Ibur during lifetime, that means after birth, and then only if he merits it. In other words, this last category that he speaks about is if a person, right, who did not sin, even any light sins, okay, and they have completely rectified themselves, they can come and influence a person during their lifetime, not at birth. They're not stuck. In other words, so what we got out of today, first of all, we talked about Cain and Abel, the sins of Cain and Abel, okay? And how they were, because they sinned, their sparks were deeply bedded into the klipot. And each and every generation, from the klipot come sparks of Cain and Abel into each and generation to become fixed, okay? Those sparks that become fixed almost as like bleeds into this category here, which is called an Ibur from birth. Okay? The idea really here is in one soul could be many souls. That you think it's only one soul, it's not necessarily so. There could be, and we don't know where the influence is. Once again, comes into that thought, the idea, or the question really, where do our thoughts come from? Okay? That those ideas, positive thoughts, positive impulses, right? Of course, we say all of the advice comes from God, but it could be that there is, within our soul, other souls that are impregnating our main soul. We don't know why we're here, once again, and so far, right? We could guess, okay? We don't know what we did in previous lifetimes. People ask me, why don't we know what we did in previous lifetimes so we can fix it? For some people, it would be so overwhelming, they wouldn't be able... What?
That would be cheating.
Well, in a certain sense, cheating. And in a certain sense, if you found out, if you knew what you... If a person were to really... If he did something really bad in a previous... You don't want to live with that.
It would be
Really knowing it would be overwhelming and devastating.
Rabbi, this is for birth, both male and female?
Yes, females have a different track in terms of reincarnating. Okay, they don't have to. They more could be in a state of they come down usually with their soulmates to help.
Yeah.
Okay, usually they want to come in only positive. They have a different track. Okay, but you don't know. Once again, the bottom line is we don't know. Okay, so in other words, it could be in people. They could have multiple souls that are attached from birth, going from birth to death, that are there just for influence, for positive things. Okay? And thank God, those type of Reuven, who's attached to Shimon, only gets positive and cannot get further blemished. As we're going to see later on, it's a big comfort to know that God has a safety hatch where the souls don't, it's not a move 3 steps and slip back 5. Okay, we'll stop
Wait a
here.
minute. First he was George, now he's lost, but he comes